Thanks to Gorilla Grow Tent for sponsoring this episode. Gorilla is well known for their quality grow tents. They have a super strong frame, thick canvas density, and a height adjusting roof. It comes with a 1-foot extension kit, and a 2-foot extension kit is optional, so you can grow even taller plants. They also have the light line, same quality as the original Gorilla Grow tents, but with a few key design changes. Go to their website, growstrongindustries.com, and use discount code MrGrowIt for 15% off.
How's it
Hey,
going?
what's up, man? GreenGoblin510. How are you, man?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah, thanks
And
for coming on to my new show, new Twitch show. Well, actually, this is on YouTube too. If you are watching this on YouTube and you didn't know, these are live streamed on Twitch first. So you can come on over and hang out with us, twitch.tv/MrGrowIt. Come hang out, join the conversation as we go along here. So,
yeah, for
how's
sure.
your day going so far?
Really good, really good. Got a bunch of stuff done this morning on the computer front, messing with OBS and editing and organizing files. You know how it gets pretty crazy sometimes. So I got
Sounds
a
like a
bunch of that
blast.
done. Yeah,
That's awesome, man. So, yeah, we'll talk all about you, and well, we'll talk just back and forth about
yeah.
different things that we have going on in our lives. We can kind of talk to. I want to actually know how you got into cannabis and stuff like that. But let's start with. I don't want to jump to assumptions and assume that everybody knows who you are. So, can you do an introduction for us?
Well, I'm GreenGoblin510. I have a YouTube channel and I'm over here on Twitch as well. I like to grow cannabis and teach people how to grow their own medicine using organic methods and being able to source as much of your organic inputs as possible yourself and or make them yourself. And that's what I'm about. Uh, Everybody deserves to be able to grow their medicine at home and get some quality stuff without spending an arm and a leg.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that one. I'm actually going to share my screen right now and show off your channel a little bit for those that don't
Nice.
know that haven't seen your channel. This is him, Green Goblin 510. I like your logo, by the way. Well, your logo, I guess, and then also your background looks
Thank you.
pretty
Thank you.
bright. Looks pretty cool. You got dank in one side and then some
Mhm.
mushrooms in the other,
Yep.
huh? So you're coming close to 10,000 subs
Getting
so
there.
far,
Getting there.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. You have a ton of different videos, man. I mean, you've been at it for quite a while here now, like over a year now, huh? What was your first video?
Yep. Little over a
February
year.
26, 2020. So you're coming up on 2 years,
Yep.
actually. So, and I remember before we did that Garden Talk episode on my podcast, I actually went through and watched almost all of your videos, and
Oh shit.
you definitely have so much information about just things that you don't really hear much about. People don't make videos on is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Um, ice water extraction, bubble hash method, your actively aerated compost teas. You have a real good compost tea video that I noticed. The foliar spray, just a ton of information about foliar sprays. What was the other one? The feminized, was it feminized or back crossing or something like that?
Oh yeah. I was reversing a plant with
Is that still up here?
yeah, cannabis breeding experiment update right there. This was a little thing I did, making uh, there's 2 ways you can do it with a colloidal silver or, trisodium, uh, silver. There's 2 chemicals there, and, you mix those in a certain dilution rate, and when you spray them on a plant, it messes with its hormones massively and makes it turn male, basically. Now when you do this, you don't get as much pollen as you would if you just had a full out male.
Interesting. Yeah,
So,
this was a
like
very in-depth video. You went over everything you need to do, know step by step in order to make the solution. And then how often do you spray that solution on?
honestly, you only need to spray it maybe 2 times, 3 times, right as it's, you know, transitioning. Um,
Okay, so after you flip that light cycle?
yep. After you flip that light cycle, the hormones are gonna start changing itself because it's a female and it wants to flower. But then you spray it 2, 3 times during that stretch period, and it'll start throwing male flowers.
Gotcha. So male flowers as in pollen sacs,
Yep.
and then what do you do from there? Do you harvest that pollen and then use it or what?
Yeah, like I said, you definitely get a lot less pollen. So what you do is you'd harvest it, put it in a small container, and selectively pollinate branches of other plants with it,
Got
and
it. That
using a
makes
little
sense.
Q-tip or trying to be as careful as possible and not blowing pollen around the room.
So if you guys want to learn more about this, just click on the plant breeding experiment video on his channel, and then check out his videos. He's got so many different things. I know those a wedding agent one too, right?
Yep,
That
Jadam
you got.
wedding agent.
So just
That's
real good
one of the
instructionals.
it's one of the best things a organic farmer or gardener can make. Honestly, is the Jadam
Do you
wedding
think
agent
so?
because it's
Why?
really effective against many pests. It's a natural soap. You're just making that soap yourself,
Hmm.
and there's no artificial detergents. And a lot of the artificial detergents like to stick around and not biodegrade, and that's why we got a lot of foaming in different sections of the oceans and stuff like that. So this is probably one of the best products that a home gardener or farmer can make because it's super cheap to make. You'll end up for like $50, $60 worth of materials being able to make like 100 gallons of this stuff. And it's going to last you quite a long time. And using Jadam wetting agent with any of your other IPM measures that you like using is just going to make those IPM measures more effective. So you
Hmm.
can mix this with essential oils, or you can mix it with neem oil, and it will act like the Dr. Bronner soap and emulsify that neem oil and make it even more effective.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, what's the difference between I use a shit brain fart? What do I use for a wedding agent? Yucca.
Yucca, yep.
What's the difference
Um,
between this and yucca?
Yucca is naturally extracted from like the yucca plant, and
Hmm.
yucca is really great wetting agent and emulsifier for if you're going to be watering it in to your soil.
Okay.
Um, the Jadam wetting agent isn't necessarily bad for your soil, but it doesn't have the same benefits as a yucca extract.
Gotcha. What are you
Five times
smoking on
fast.
today, man?
Um, this is Space Center.
Oh, by who?
It's actually a Jungle Boys cultivar,
Ooh, hype strain, eh?
and it's a little bit hype, yeah.
Nice, nice. I got some Zephyr by Galaxy Genetics. Do you watch Baby J 420 on YouTube or no?
Um, it sounds
She's
familiar. I
she's
have
been
like
at it for a
500
while.
subscriptions.
500? Wow,
Yeah, not a joke, no joke.
that's
I've had
crazy.
my YouTube, the same YouTube that I post to. I've had that account since the early 2008.
Damn, that's crazy. 2008. You been following channels back then or what?
Oh
Grow
yeah,
channels?
absolutely. Mr. Grow It. Um,
2008. I wasn't back in 2008.
no, but as soon as you came on, I've been following, and then like Mr. Tight, he's no longer on the YouTube anymore. Growing with
Mm.
Mr. Tight.
Yeah, oh yeah. I wonder what happened to him.
His channel got took down a couple of times, and then sometimes people go back at it, and sometimes people are like, ah, whatever, you know.
Yeah, 2018 took out so many channels, and when they took out that 1,000 channels or whatever, for those that don't know, YouTube did like a purge of all cannabis channels, both cultivation and consumption channels back in 2018. And my channel went down. Two of my channels went down. One of them went back. The other one did not come back. But so many people had their channels terminated. I think almost everybody got their channel back,
Most
but
did,
when they got them
but
back, a lot of people just were inactive anymore. They're like, forget it. YouTube isn't stable. Blah blah blah.
yeah,
Uh, I actually I went back to work. I had another job, so I didn't have any time to upload the second half of 2018, and that's when Mr. Canucks blew up. I mean, he exploded, absolutely
oh,
exploded
absolutely,
in 2018. I remember he went from like I don't know,
Fif
30,000 up to like
yeah,
130,000 within 6 months or something crazy like that. Like it was insane.
it was definitely insane, but yeah, I've been following people on YouTube for the longest. Vader, OG, Ocean Grown, um, GML, like, too many to name, honestly.
We got a question from Big Sexy Buds for Green Goblin. I didn't forget about you, Big Sexy Buds. I did see this. I'm going to put it up on the
Okay.
screen right now. He says, I've been using natural ferments to add to my water, or even a compost tea. Should I not be pHing the water?
Um, what what I would do is if you're worried about the pH of your water, I would check it before you start making the tea or adding the ferments. I would check the pH. If the pH is crazy out of line, if it's over 7 or under 6, you might want to pre-adjust it a little bit. But um, if it's in those ranges or if it's at like 9 and you're really high, you're definitely going to have to adjust that before adding your microbes or adding your stuff for your compost tea because that's definitely going to make it thrive a lot more. But other than that, having checking the pH of your ferment and or the compost tea when it's done is gonna be a completely different pH from when it started.
That's wild. I did a Garden Talk podcast episode. I'm not sure if you watched that with Tim Cormick from Culture Biologics, and one of the things he had mentioned in there is that no matter what, after you're done brewing the tea, no matter what the pH is, don't adjust it. Would you
Yep,
agree with that, or would you disagree with that? Or
I would agree with that. Um, if anything, y it's not really it's kinda adjusting it, but you can dilute your teas down. A lot of the times you can dilute them up to 50% and still be really effective and be able to make a smaller batch go further. But, other than that, yeah, I would not adjust it. The microbes and the little ecosystem that got built up in that compost tea is going to, um, adjust that pH for you no matter, uh, once they get into their home, that is. Once they get in their home, then they're gonna adjust that pH 'cause they're not naturally born in water when you're making a compost tea. You're just trying to extract and, um expand the population of the microbes that live in soil. They don't live in water. So once they get back into that soil, they're gonna adjust and be completely fine.
now, what's your take on, um, say you're top dressing like normal, right? You're top dressing organics, and all you're doing is doing water only, right?
Mhm.
Because the nutrients are in the medium, you're just watering them in. Um, what is your take on if your water source is above 7? Let's say it's 7.5. Would you still recommend adjusting the pH down before giving it to the plants, or would you keep it at the 7.5 pH and just water in at that?
I would adjust it down a little bit, honestly. And what I like to use is vinegar, an all natural vinegar. It's like 4.5% acidic. And when you put that natural vinegar in the water, it's going to drop the pH a little bit and you're good to go. And you're not worried about buildup of phosphoric acids or anything else.
Buildup of phosphoric. Okay, so normal pH down is phosphoric acid. I
Mhm.
believe that's a most common pH down. I'm not sure if all the pH downs are that of every brand, but phosphoric acid. So you're saying that could build up?
Eventually, expect like, and this is we're talking planning long term, couple years down the road of still using the same soil.
Hmm.
Eventually, it could build up and damage some stuff. But
Huh. Interesting. I've never heard that one before. Yeah, because I use RO water sometimes, at least in the past filter
mhm,
that I had, the past membrane, it would come out above 7. So I'd literally add
couple
2
drops.
drops. It's like 2 drops. That's all it needs because it's just about pure H2O at that point almost, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I think my RO ppm comes in at like 20 ppm or something like that. So it doesn't strip out all the ions, but strips out most of them, like 98% or whatever the heck that calculation ends up.
yeah,
I start at 485 or 487 or something like that. So it strips out a lot. And then so it's so easy to adjust down just with a couple of drops. And some people
and
are so concerned.
when you're doing a couple of drops like that, I wouldn't be concerned about some kind of buildup. But if you're trying to adjust from 9 down to 7 every single time that you're watering, I might worry about that.
So you'd rather instead of using phosphoric acid, use vinegar.
Yeah, yeah, a natural
Okay.
vinegar, and if you have a vinegar with the mother or you made your own vinegar, even better.
It's like an apple cider
Mhm.
vinegar or. or was the
Apple
white
cider
vinegar?
vinegar or, yeah, even white vinegars work,
Both of those work?
yeah.
Okay.
And then a little finish up on the pH, like, a lot of the living soil and growing organically, you technically don't have to pH your water, and that's because in the soil itself, when many of the amendments are breaking down, that's an acidic process, so when you put in, water in there, it's pretty much gonna balance it itself, as well as you're putting in pH buffers like oyster shell meal or, um, gypsum or lime. Um, so a lot of times, a lot of people say you don't have to pH, um, but if you don't pH, sometimes that pH buffer medium in your soil will get used up, and you'll still end up having pH issues down the road. So it's a good idea to try to stay neutral on your pH on your water, and that way the soil can just do its thing.
Kenzo asks, can you use lemon or lime juice for pH down?
You can in a pinch. I'd rather use vinegar because some of the things in lemon and lime will actually harm some of the microbiology, not all of it.
Cool. Got another question here in the chat. This one's from Little Do Too. I experienced some heat stress on a couple autoflower plants because I put the plants next to a sliding glass window and it was pretty hot. Applied water and a little cow mag. Cow mag fixes everything, eh? Am I going down the right path to recovery? What's your take on that?
I'd say, yeah, as long as you address that issue with the heat and making sure that's not going to happen again, you're definitely on the road to recovery. If I could, I would do a little bit of an aloe foliar spray. It's just like when a human gets burned or a little hot and you put some aloe on it, it feels a lot better. If you do that to your plant will feel a lot better.
When else do you use aloe?
Honestly, you can spray aloe every single day if you wanted to in veg. And all that's going to do is encourage plant growth.
What's in it that encourages the plant growth?
There's salicylic acid, and then there's also different hormones and enzymes that are natural plant hormones and enzymes that promote growth. Because it's a desert succulent plant, it has to have these kinds of enzymes because it's not going to find them in the soil.
And you actually have a video on your channel which shows that you actually create like a rooting hormone. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah. I just
Yeah.
use aloe, and if you want to, you can take a little bit of the great white and mix some of the great white into the aloe gel, and then use that as a cloning rooting hormone.
My girlfriend has some aloe downstairs. She moved in a couple months ago, and I'm gonna snag some of that every now and then. You know what I mean? I'm sure she'll probably get mad at me because I'm cutting up her plant, but but hey, it's useful in the garden, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so useful to the fact, and like, it's a good wetting agent as well. So when you add it to your water to water in to your plants, uh, it helps with the wetting agent and surfactant power there, and allows even watering. Um, I went down to Home Depot in my local area and just bought 3 or 4 of them and put them in a little bed to the side there, and I have aloe all the time.
Can you recommend an aloe product? Ask Little Do.
Um, there's only one real aloe product that's out there that is really recommendable because of how it's done, and the Build-A-Soil has it. It's the freeze-dried, aloe, and it's at 200 concentration, and that's the product I would recommend.
Okay. And then another question here: can I clone a single shoot of aloe?
Aloe grows a little differently. Once it becomes a little more mature in its life, it'll throw off as what's called pups, and it's kind of like a strawberry. Well, another plant's just going to grow right out of it, and you can take that little pup and put that in another container, and now you have multiple aloe. Unfortunately, it's not real easy to cut a piece off an aloe plant and have that root.
Interesting. Dexter Morgan, thanks for the follow. Oh man, Dexter, love that
Dexter's out
show.
here.
Let's get off topic here. You watch that? You watch Dexter or no?
Oh yeah, I watched them
What?
all except the latest season that
You
just
haven't watched the
started.
latest season yet?
No.
Oh man, dude, I highly recommend. If you watched the first one and you liked it,
Mhm.
watch the new series. It's actually a whole new series, right? So it's back to season one, but it picks up right where it left off, man. And it's so good. It's really really good.
Yeah, I have to check it out. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen a couple of advertisements for it. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to check that out.
I feel like it's a must watch if you've watched Dexter before, for sure. So, best food for microbes. Ask
Um,
Dexter Morgan.
Honestly, the best food for microbes are the best foods for human beings. A diverse palette of different vegetables and minerals. That I mean, as easy as it gets. The microbes literally eat exactly what we eat, just in a smaller version. All the dry amendments are um, not necessarily vegetables we would eat, but they're dried up plants, ground up, and sold to you. That's what they are. That's what a dry amendment is, except for a very few of them. Some of them are mineral products, so that's like a ground up rock, and some of them are like humic acids, which is unfortunately just a mine product. Even though it's completely organic, it is mined, and mining's got its own set of caveats to it. But everything that the microbes like to eat, we like to eat.
Including our skin, right? One thing I learned is Bacillus subtilis,
Oh yeah,
which
that's
is
on their
very
skin.
common is in hydroponic for the microbe products that we buy. A lot of them include Bacillus subtilis, right? It's as one of the most common one, highest density of it.
Hmm.
Colony forming units, whatever you want to call it, and that's all over your body, right?
Hmm.
It's crazy,
That's what
mind blowing.
actually um, that's what actually makes you smell. Is not your sweat, but it's the microbes eating what's in your sweat and then farting it out.
Really? Wow. Learn something new every day. So let's get into your personal life a little bit. When did you first get into cannabis?
Oh, I was pretty young. I would say 14, 15 years old. I first started experimenting with cannabis, and I'd say I smoked on and off until I was about 16 or 17, and then I was like, I better start growing because I know that I want to use this medicine for life, and I'd rather know where it's coming from, have a solid connection to the medicine, and never have to to the corner or deal with shady people, this, that, the other thing. I'm going to try to cut all that out and just provide for myself.
Crazy how many people start so young, and then you hear about the studies that come out where it impacts your brain, right? If you're, a teenage consuming, 12, 13, 14 years old, I guess all the way up to 20, 25 years old when your brain's fully developed. Apparently, it impacts your brain in some way where it makes you dumber or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know if you've heard
Mm,
about that study or what.
I've heard about that study, but at the same time, it is only one study so far, and they are right when they say we don't have a lot of the information. We haven't studied it because, quite frankly, especially here in the US, it's been so outlawed that even universities and medical labs couldn't research anything about it up until a few years ago.
Wow.
So we are really behind on what the studies are. Even if it may make some body chemistries not develop all the way or have the neurotransmitters act correctly uh, according to the medical view if they've been consuming since 12 and through their developmental phase. There's so many benefits to the plant that that might just be the one downside, and we don't even know that yet. I'd like to see a few more studies on it. The unfortunate fact is we won't know for sure for another 10 or 15 years because we need to watch somebody that is a 13 or 14-year-old smoker for the rest of their life. We need to watch them and take studies on it. People need to, not that there is a study out there right now that they can do this, but if there is a study in the near future that comes out and say, "Hey, we wanna know your smoking habits for the next X amount of time, and we wanna do a blood test every so often," they're doing that to see if it's harming people. They're doing that to see if it does change your brain chemistry, because there's a lot of heavy hitters out there that have lots of money that would rather see cannabis have a negative side effect of some kind. So, let's if the study comes about, let's try to give them the information.
For sure. Seems like you read up on a lot of studies, right? You kind of got your nose deep into studies when it comes down to it, huh? Have you read anything recently this year as far as like cannabis cultivation studies?
Yeah, a lot on like cannabis cultivation with natural methods. I've read quite a few studies on that this year. A lot of people are more and more people are swinging to that avenue, so more and more studies are going into it. So that's just where the money goes. That's where the studies go. So if more and more people are growing organically, that's where the studies are going to start leaning. And they go, okay, we're going to check out the microbiology. Like we're still learning every single day about the microbiology and what is a great soil. We're still learning every single day.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think that's one thing that new growers kind of get caught up on is they think that everything is known. We don't know everything there is about growing, right? Um, uh, Folks make the mistake of thinking that there's one way to do it as well. So like I'll get
Mhm.
new growers that just planted seeds, are like I'm just starting out now. It's like, but they have a question, and the question's like, well, it depends on if you're doing this, and they're like just mind boggled because they think that there's one way to do it and that the best way has been identified, and that everybody's doing it the same way, which is just the furthest way of the truth. Like first of all, there's a million ways to do it,
Oh,
and there's
absolutely.
so many different things that we haven't actually found out about the plant, right? Even like the chemical processes that are happening within the plant, the chemical reactions that are happening, how the plant is actually developing. Like there's so much we don't know about still.
Oh, absolutely. And that's another great thing about gardening in general, in my opinion, is that you don't have to know exactly those things. You don't have to know exactly the chemical processes that a plant is going through inside its own body to be able to grow some strawberries or to grow some of your own medicine, or because you can count on a lot of people that have been growing in different ways, and you can follow which way gravitates to you the most. If you like the organic most, you can go that route. If you like the super clean look of hydroponics and white tables and white walls and like that, go with hydroponics to go grow your medicine. Um, in my opinion, and this is opinion because there isn't, data on this. I think you get better medicine when you grow organic, but that's my opinion.
Is it now? What would be the reasoning? The reason would have to be nutrients. Is that right?
Partially, it's partially nutrients. More so is cannabis is a land plant. It's not a sea plant. It's not an algae. It's not a seaweed. It it's not meant technically to grow in water. Can you grow it in water? Absolutely. And there's something that relationship with the roots and the mycorrhizal fungi, the bacteria, the protozoa that allows the plant to reach its full genetic potential easier, in my opinion.
Okay. I know. I'm actually enrolled in cannabis cultivation certification at Utah State
Hmm.
University with Dr. Bruce Bugby. And one thing they do for their studies is everything is grown hydroponically. So all
Because
their studies are done hydroponically because they want that precision, right? They
they
want
want
that
that precision in.
the repetitiveness of it, so they can feed a certain amount of ppm of the different elements, and then make a small adjustment to the ppm of one of the elements, and then see what the changes are from there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And yeah, I mean, there's a big variable when it comes to growing in a soil, right? Growing in a medium. Big variable is you've got, I mean, there's so many variables really, but you've got the microbes there. You've got different amendments that are being broken down. There's so much going on in the soil. And plants can react differently depending on what's going on down there, right? I mean, you
Oh,
even have
absolutely.
viruses and viroids.
Hmm.
Nobody talks about that. How many people have gotten deficiencies on their plants, and it's actually been a viroid or a virus, and we have no way of knowing, right?
Probably quite a
It
few.
looks like a
Yeah.
nitrogen toxicity or it looks like magnesium deficiency, but really it could be a virus. So
And the
it's
only way to
crazy.
really tell uh, is if you could pull the plant out of its container and inspect the roots, smell the root ball, and then you might be able to find out it was a virus or a pythium or some kind of root rot or something. But most times you're not going to be able to tell, especially new growers. They're going to be like, I don't know, it's just doing it.
Yep. Got a question here in the chat. Big Sexy Buds. Did you get into organic growing after you started smoking, or did you already grow your own vegetables and fruits?
Um, I was interested in gardening for a long time before I started actually growing my own medicine. When I was a kid, in school, we did a field trip, and we went out and we cloned plants. We tested the soil that was out in our national park, and I always gravitated towards that, and I always had fun during that class, you know what I'm saying? And, we always had not necessarily a edible garden. We always been growing flowers and, having nice stuff out in the yard, making sure that the yard looked nice. It wasn't necessarily for edible things, but then a few years later, I did start growing some things that you can eat, like strawberries, lemon thyme, grapes, asparagus, a few different herbs, cilantro, stuff like that.
What's in your vegetable garden right now?
Nothing, because it's
Nothing.
frozen.
So nothing indoors, huh?
Nothing indoors, no.
I
Nothing
got some
for eat, nothing for food.
I got some peppers growing. It's my first time growing peppers
Nice.
indoors, and a bullnose pepper looks similar to like a bell pepper.
Mhm.
I got them in 1 gallon containers. And one thing I learned is the whole pollination process, right? I don't know how much you know about growing peppers, but
Yep.
literally, like you have to shake the plant every
Mhm.
day. You're basically shaking the plant because once that flower opens, pollen's being released, but it needs to go from one part to the other part of the flower. I need to research and learn more about it. I don't know if you
Yeah,
know about it, but
the stomata, releases the pollen and has to get to the pistil, and the flower itself produces both the pistil and stomata. Unlike cannabis, where we have a female plant and a male plant, it produces both right on it. But if it doesn't get shaken by, like, an animal or you, the grower, it won't necessarily pollinate itself, and you maybe get 1 pepper or 2 peppers instead of 20 peppers on 1 plant.
yeah, that's crazy. So I'm shaking it every day now. And yeah, because flowers will just drop off, right? And nothing will form within that flower. So the flower will
Correct.
come out, the pollen will get released. Should be shaking it so it hits the pistil, and then once it starts to close up, a pepper will grow in its place,
Mhm.
or it will just the flower will just drop off, and you've missed that
Yep.
opportunity to grow a
Yep.
pepper in that area, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm pretty pumped about that one.
Peppers are nice to get into 'cause, you can make some, like, hot sauces and mix them into so many meals, so they're nice to have around.
Yeah, I think I'm liking it. I think I like it better than growing like lettuce or leafy greens.
Mhm.
I just feel like you can get away in like smaller container and like I don't know lettuce because I'm doing the cut and come again method for the lettuce, and it's like
Mhm.
it's all right, but it'd be better if it was like a whole group of lettuce, one head of lettuce really. It's different.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's, more of that loose leaf lettuce where you can come by every couple of days and take some lettuce off the plant, and
Mm,
it doesn't really form that head and make a like an iceberg lettuce that you get from the store.
yep. I actually got a question from Grow Goodies. Has anyone used their own worm leachate in their medicinal garden? I have this grow, and so far the plants look great. You use worm leachate or what?
Um, Worm leachate is a little iffy sometimes. It depends on how well the worms were breaking down the stuff and if you monitored your bin well and you didn't overfeed. Um, if the worm leachate smells like worm castings, just a strong worm casting smell, I would go for it. Sometimes it will smell not so great from rotting material that you ended up putting in your worm bin. I would not use that on your medicinal garden.
So you do a composting? Do you do bokashi composting, or do you have a worm bin, or what?
Oh yeah, I have a worm bin. Um, I should do bokashi composting, but I don't right now. Um, but yeah, definitely anybody can start a worm bin. Go for it because you're gonna get free amendments, pretty much worm castings that are rather expensive nowadays. I mean, some of the worm castings you go buy $20 or $30 bag for like a couple cubic feet. So worm casting, especially if you're trying to outfit a few beds or an outdoor garden or whatnot, they can get expensive. So starting your own worm bin will definitely net you good results, as well as you can the worms themselves will breed, and then you can take those worms and put them right in your garden bed or put them right in your pot, and they'll do the same thing right inside the pot or bed, creating more casings and, air channels for better oxygen.
I have some red wigglers in my grow pots right now, and some European night crawlers in there as well.
Mhm.
And then I have a worm bin. And it's wintertime now. It's starting to get cold. So it has its own challenges of what I'm finding, because I'm pretty new to composting.
Okay.
But as the temperature drops, I mean, maintaining that heat, maintaining that activity, things just slow down. And
Oh, yeah.
so, monitoring the amount you're actually putting in and making sure you're not putting too much in is something I've learned recently. So I've been putting in like eggshells, banana peels, any leftover greens. I've been putting in there. What else have I been putting in there? Coffee grinds.
Coffee
Coffee
grounds.
grounds. Yeah. What do you usually put in your compost bins?
Pretty much everything you were just saying there, and every once in a while, I'll throw a handful of dry amendments in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they'll eat those up quite nicely, and like I said, a lot of the dry amendments are just ground down plants and minerals, and there's 2 things that worms need to survive, is the minerals, so they can help digest and actually, um, process this material, and they need the greens, the nitrogens, the amino acids, all the different stuff that comes with the greens. So, tossing a handful of, Build a Soil, Craft Blend, or Dr. Earth's, tomato blend or whatever that one's called, I forget. Yeah, Dr. Earth tomato blend, I think it is.
Hmm.
And just throwing that in there every once in a while, your worms are gonna go crazy for it. And
Huh.
then a good tip for people just starting out on worm bins is if you grind up all the food that you intend to feed to uh, the worms, grind it up, and then add like a little bit of water to it so it becomes a paste, and throw it in ice cube trays and freeze them. You can feed them a couple of cubes a day without worrying about overfeeding them or getting them too active or doing anything like that.
That's a really good tip. Yeah, I've been putting in just straight banana peels and doing just hand crushing of the eggshells and put them in there, but it takes a while to break down, especially in the wintertime here. So it's like I've almost gone to the point where like I don't really have anywhere else to put things.
Mhm.
So next step I think would be to just blend everything, right? That's going to help
Yeah,
with
blend it,
faster
put it in the
breakdown.
freezer.
So everything, huh? Blend
Mhm.
the banana peels, blend the eggshells.
The
Uh,
coffee grounds, any leafy greens you got left over. Uh, you could if you don't care about the blender anymore or the grinder anymore, you can throw a
yeah,
little bit of cardboard in there so there's some cellulose. Uh, you can throw a little bit of craft blend or any of the other nutrients that you want in there. You can get really particular and only feed your worms craft blend and other dry amendments so you know that I know they've only had a diet of good things, so what's coming out has to be good. Uh, but pretty much anything you wanna add into your worm food, try to do it in equal parts, lean heavier on the greens, and mix everything together.
gotcha. So would coffee grounds, that's browns, right? So you want
Mhm.
your greens and browns. So coffee grounds, eggshells, and that would be a brown. Would you consider that a brown? And then also
Kind
the
of a
banana
brown, yeah.
peels.
The banana peels would be more of a green,
Okay.
especially if they're fresh, like you just ate a banana kinda thing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, they'd be more of a green. Once they turn
Okay.
brown, like, they turn black and brown when they've been sitting out, then it's starting to become a brown.
What can go wrong if you have too many browns over greens? Just they don't have enough food, or
Yeah, pretty much, like, the carbon's really great to help the whole process of the stuff breaking down, and that's what the browns are, but what the microbes and in turn, the worms feed on, is the greens.
okay. Gotcha.
Because
Question in the chat.
worms don't necessarily eat the stuff that you feed them, the microbes do, and then the worms eat the microbes.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Question in the chat. Have you ever top dressed your worm bins with neem meal? Worms love it. Blooms like
Mhm.
crazy and helps control the mite populations a bit. Have you done it?
Absolutely. I have, yeah. They love neem seed meal.
That's cool. I've never done that. I might have to pick some up.
And that, like he was saying, it helps with any bug pressures you might be having in your worm bin. You might have a fungus gnat thing, or a lot of worm bins. You'll see mites inside them, like soil mites, but those are good mites.
Yeah. It's
You'll
the
see
gnats that are bad, right?
and the gnats are bad, but they're more of an irritant to humans. Most time, it doesn't even mess with the plant unless you have a severe infestation of gnats. But yeah, they're more of just an irritant.
It's,
The only other thing is they can carry diseases, so they are a disease vector. So if one plant has a pythium or a root rot, and you have a bunch of fungus gnats, those fungus gnats can transfer it to an entire different pot. It's not the same plant because they're mobile and can carry the disease with them. But hopefully, if you've noticed that you're getting fungus gnats in your actual plants, you backed off on the watering a little bit. Uh, Not too much to where you'll harm in the soil, but you backed off on the water just a little bit to let it dry out a little bit, knock down their populations a bit, and that the same thing with the root rot. You got to back off the water a little bit. So both of those, you're kind of helping both of those things by doing that.
would you work to combat them in different ways, like, for example, like spraying like neem oil or anything like that, or diatomaceous earth? I mean, that could probably do some harm to things in the worm bin, couldn't it?
Yeah, the diatomaceous earth is a little glassy
Uh,
for the worms.
yeah.
But, definitely you can spray neem oil in your worm bin. You can top dress it with the neem seed meal. That will also help. If you have to, put a layer of sand on top, just like a layer of sand across the top,
Yep.
and it's gonna prevent you from feeding as easily, but the fungus gnats won't be able to go in and out, so a lot of them will die off, and the eggs will die off eventually. But you'd have to move a layer of sand back every time you would wanna feed.
Yeah. I'd see that'd be a pain. Got a tip in the chat from Grow Goodies. Says good to bake the eggshells, crush them with a blender. This stops any egg pathogens and provides worms with grit for their gizzards. That's how they
Right.
digest their food. So baking it, huh? That's a thing.
Baking it, yep, but not only baking it, um, kills off, pathogens, any E. coli or salmonella that might be present on a bird egg. Um, it also degrades some of the carbon that's in that egg so that the calcium is more easily released.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know about that. Now, what about this? Kind of switching things up a little bit. What about the eggshells, crushing them? I think what do you put? Mix them with vinegar. Do you
Mhm.
do that process? Can you talk to us about
Absolutely.
that?
That's, making some water-soluble calcium,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
that's pretty much the same process we were just explaining. You bake and or cook the eggshells until they become a little bit brown, and that browning indicates that you got a lot of the carbon and, any excess stuff off the egg shells, and then you take the eggshells and you put them in the bottom of a jar and pour, vinegar over them. And it's real simple. Let's say you got a pint mason jar and you fill up the pint mason jar with this much eggs in the bottom of it. You fill the rest up with vinegar, and it's a 1 to 10 part, um, thing, and you just let that sit for about 10, 14 days. At first, it's gonna bubble up. You're gonna see a chemical reaction happening. When you put the vinegar into the eggshells, it's gonna start foaming like an old, school project with the baking soda and vinegar.
Yeah.
But, after a while, the bubbles are gonna slow down, and you're just gonna let that sit for 10 days, strain out the what solids are left, and you have water-soluble calcium, in which you can
Wow.
take a few, milliliters of the solution and add it into your water, and you have your own cow mag without the mag.
A couple milliliters. You said 2 milliliters
Mhm.
per gallon or something.
Yep.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
people that are worried about the acidity because 'cause you're using vinegar, um, the chemical reaction that the eggs were going under is actually neutralizing the acid, so it ends up being a pretty neutral solution at the end.
Great, good information, man. Yeah, that's another thing I want to try. I love talking to you, man, because I get so much information. I'm just like so excited to like continue
Mhm.
to try things out and stuff. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, appreciate your dropping some knowledge bombs here. Awesome. So, what do you got going on in your garden right now?
Right now, I got, like, too many going on, I think. But, I got we just popped some Dreadnought and some Alien Rift from Ocean Grown, and then we also popped some Gorilla Glue from ILGM, and then I got Vanilla Kush, Night Terror OG, Black Cherry Cheesecake, Blue Grape, Stank Fruit,
Loaded.
Slurs. There's one more I'm forgetting. But, yeah, we got a few different cultivars going right now.
A few, just a few, huh? Crazy variety there. That's awesome. I love growing different cultivars too. I can grow a max of 12 plants. So if I could grow 12 different cultivars, I would. But sometimes you get those regular seeds, and it's like, well, if I
You gotta
germinate
plant a
one,
few. Yeah.
yeah, you got to plant a few just in case you get one of them as a male, or then you could have two females, or you could have none because they're both males. So it's always such a gamble. Actually, I do want to get your opinion on feminized seeds. What do you think about feminized seeds? Are you one of the ones that are for them and think that they're a good thing, or are there some people that think they're feminized seeds are a bad thing, and they shouldn't be around the community and they shouldn't be used for breeding and so on and so forth? So what's your take on feminized seeds?
Um, I do prefer regular seeds. Um, I don't have a huge thing against feminized seeds, especially if the breeder that made them took their time, made sure that they were stable before they feminized them. Um, you know, and it's a good product, but I wouldn't breed with a feminized seed stock. Once that plant has become a feminized plant, you're not getting a lot of the phenotypical or genotypical variation anymore when you breed with it, and you're more likely to run into mutations very quickly and not good ones. Some mutations you're like, "Oh, that's dope. That looks cool, and it helped the plant." But a lot of mutations aren't good ones. So yeah, I wouldn't breed with feminized seed stock, but especially for a lot of newcomers that don't want to worry about if they get a male or not, they're definitely a good tool. But yeah, I guess that's where I stand on that. I wouldn't breed with them, but they're a good tool.
Now, would you clone them and keep them around as clones, generation after generation after generation? As
Oh yeah.
well, cut after cut after cut. You would, no problem. Not worried about the epigenetic drift or anything like that.
I mean, so far I've never seen a genetic drift of any kind whatsoever. Um, the only thing I've seen is a cutting might get sick. It might get a virus. It might get a fungi. It might get a bacterial infection. And now every single time you make a cut off that plant, it just not performing like it used to. That definitely happens. But that's not necessarily genetic drift. That's more your plant sick. A lot of times you can recover that plant by doing micropropagation or tissue cultures. It goes by a couple of different names. But you take a slice of that plant and you grow it out on some agar that's 100% clean agar, sterile, and you can grow the plant away from the bacteria or virus and start isolating it and getting it better. Um, but that you can't do that every time. It's a little expensive, especially if you're not doing it yourself because you're paying a lab to do it. But you can save genetics, especially if they're real important to breeders and stuff like that. It might be worth it for them to pay 5-6 grand to save that genetic. It might be worth it for them.
Yeah, yeah, that's good information for sure. Want to tell people where they can find you and what you got upcoming in the future? Any Twitch exclusives that you can reveal, or what?
Um, you can find me here on Twitch at GreenGoblin510. Um, Me and Lantern like to play games on there, and we do some of the plant work that takes a little bit longer. That might not necessarily make an interesting video, but sometimes people like to join us when we're doing the defoliation or trimming or any of the stuff that takes a long time. Um, you can come check me out on YouTube. I do weekly updates on both the veg and bud area. there's always something changing every single week, and usually during the updates, I drop even more knowledge during, what I'm doing.
Awesome. I'll definitely have a link to your channels down in the description section below if you're on YouTube. Again, if you're on YouTube, this is live on Twitch. So come hang out with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mr. Grow It. And
Yeah.
you can talk to us and influence the conversation. You can ask some questions with the guests live. So thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it. I always learn so much. I would
Oh,
love to
not a
have you on the
problem.
show in the future. Sometime we'll give it some time, but
Oh, yeah.
definitely, check back in and see what you got going on new in your
Oh,
garden at
yeah.
that point and stuff. So
Absolutely. I always enjoy having different chats with people and just talking about growing. Like, it's definitely one of my passions, and I like when people light up when they learn something new.
it's definitely been a great conversation. Learned so much. Thanks again for coming on. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Thanks, everyone. See you next stream. Peace.